Hello and welcome to my CISSP review questions video series. I am Ceolito Rodriguez. My questions will cover the 8 domains of the CISSP with detailed explanations, demos, real-world examples. Again, this is the only place that you need to be if you are really serious about passing the CISSP exam. Question 71. Which access control method is based on users issuing access requests on systems resources, features assigned to those resources, the operational or situational context, and a set of policies specified in terms of those features and context? A, mandatory access control or MAC. B, attribute-based access control, ABAC. C, role-based access control, RBAC. Or D, discretionary access control, or DAC or DAC. The correct answer here is B, attribute-based access control. Attribute-based access control determines access rights based on a combination of user attributes, for example, the department, the job role, etc. Uh, resource attributes such as the classification level and environmental conditions, for example, the time of access or the location where the users are. Policies evaluate these attributes to make dynamic access decisions, allowing the grained and context-aware control. So the way that this attribute-based access control works, so first of all, you have a user that's signing in. The program, like for example, conditional access in Microsoft, just to give you an example, will evaluate user attributes. Does this user belong to the HR department? In other words, it's a member of the HR group, for example. So it would evaluate environmental data such as where is the user logging from? Is the user logging from a trusted IP address? So in Microsoft Conditional Access, you create this uh, ranges of IP addresses, and when you create a conditional access policy, you basically say, well, if the user is coming from this IP address, do this. If it does not come from this IP address, it could be the country, for example. Uh, I have, I used to work at a company in which we block access to a number of companies. So let's say China or North Korea, or Iran. So we had a list of blacklisted countries because, first of all, we didn't do any business with those countries, and wanted to make sure that anything that came from that was completely bypassed. Obviously, that's why cyber criminals would use tools to kind of masquerade that. But again, you can masquerade to a certain level. Some of these programs would know exactly where they are coming from, would block that. You can evaluate environmental data, like for again the location, trust, the time that they are logging in, and so the conditional access policy. So if all the conditions are met, then you can grant access. If the conditions are not met, you may require MFA to make sure that the users are legitimate users. Uh, Otherwise, then you denied or restrict access. Okay, so that's in a nutshell how a conditional access would work. This is a key component of the zero trust methodology, in which you need to evaluate every access, every signing needs to be evaluated to make sure that the users are allowed to the access. And again, It doesn't matter whether the user is internal or external. And that's the big difference between um, zero trust is a new mindset in which traditionally we have this perimeter network in which everything that comes from the outside is untrusted and everything that's inside it's trusted. Well, with zero trust, everything changes. So nothing is trusted. Everything needs to be verified. And this is where conditional access comes in. And that would be an example of attribute-based access control. Question 72. What is a security concern when considering implementation, or rather implementing software-defined networking or SDN? A, it has a decentralized architecture. B, it increases the attack footprint. C, it uses open source protocols. Or D, it is cloud-based. The correct answer is B, it increases the attack footprint. Software-defined networking, or SDN, centralizes control of network traffic by decoupling the control plane from the data plane. While this provides flexibility and efficiency, centralizing control introduces a larger attack surface and greater risk if the SDN controller is compromised, making increased attack footprint a primary security concern, which is what the question is asking. The question is asking about the primary security concern. So it's important that you pay attention to exactly what the question is asking. Obviously, to be able to answer a question like this, you need to understand exactly what is SDN. So SDN, or software-defined networking, is a modern network architecture that separates the control plane, which is kind of like the brain, from the data plane, which is the body, or where the data resides. Traditionally, each networking device, like a switch or a router, had its own intelligence and made decisions independently. Again, so routers still do. Uh, um, but a lot of companies are using SDN. So the companies that are using the traditional routers and switches, they're using the same thing that has been done before. But in SDN, the decision making is centralized in a controller, which has a full view, if you want to call it, um, of the network and can dynamically manage traffic based on business needs. So this approach allows for greater agility and flexibility in configuring networks, centralized management through software, automation of network provisioning and policy enforcement, and improve scalability and security and visibility. So this is what basically SDN would look like. So essentially, SDN makes networks more programmable, if you want to call it, more responsive and efficient, and it's ideal for modern data centers and cloud environments. So if you use any cloud environment, if you're heavily invested in Microsoft Azure or AWS or Google GCP, then you are um, using SDN. Now, those companies that are still using everything on premises, probably they're not using SDN, and many folks may not be familiar with this. But this is an important concept for modern network that you need to understand as a cybersecurity professional, and of course, in order to be able to pass the CISSP exam. Question 73. What is the best way to restrict access to a file system on computer systems? A, use least privilege at each level to restrict access. B, restrict access to all users. C, allow a user group to restrict access. Or D, use a third-party tool to restrict access. The correct answer here is A. Use least privilege at each level to restrict access. Applying the principle of least privilege means that users are granted only the minimum access necessary to perform their job functions. When applied to a file system, this ensures that users can only read, write, or execute files if they absolutely need to. It minimizes potential damage from accidents, insider threats, or malware. The principle of least privilege is a key component of zero trust because it perform minimal access. So basically, users and systems get only the permissions that they need to perform their job. So it's not only users that need access to resources, you get also systems that need access to other systems. So this applies to everything. It reduces risk by limiting potential damage from errors, malware, or insider threats. A lot of problems happen in a company because people make mistakes. So if you have a user that is not well trained with a lot of privileges, that could be a potential problem. And even advanced users can make mistake, right? So just because you are an advanced user, if you don't need to have full access to a system, you shouldn't have. It improves security by those things that I just talked about because it protects sensitive data by restricting access. Easier auditing, so it simplifies the tracking and monitoring of access and usage. And among all the things, also supports compliance because it aligns with the security best practices and regulatory requirements. Okay, so basically, you should remove or restrict privileges, right? And only necessary systems and applications. And what happens in many companies is that you get these users, they are move around in the company, they move from one position to another, and all this access that they had to systems accumulate, which is like access creep, right? And very rarely the access reviews to these users it's watch or track to make sure that they are removed from systems that they no longer need to be especially because people in big companies they move around from position to position. So very important to keep this in mind. Question 74. Which of the following is the primary reason for selecting the appropriate level of detail for audit record generation? A. Avoid lengthy audit reports. B. Enable generation of corrective action reports. C. Facilitate a root cause analysis or RCA. Or D. Lower costs through the system development lifecycle or SDLC. The correct answer here is C. Facilitate a root cause analysis. Selecting the appropriate level of detail for audit record generation is primarily done to support effective root cause analysis. Audit records help security teams and auditors trace events, understand anomalies, and determine the origin of issues like breaches, misconfigurations, or failures. Question 75. What is the correct order of execution for security architecture? And I'm not going to read this all these choices over here. So make sure that you pause the question, read the choices, and try to answer this question. The correct answer is B. Governance, strategy and program management, project delivery, and operations. So the correct execution order for the security architecture aligns with how a structure and a scalable security is integrated across the organization. So one, governance, establishes policies, roles, and responsibilities. Two, strategy and program management, sets long-term goals and organizes efforts to meet them. Three, project delivery, implements the strategy through specific security initiatives and technologies. And four, operations, manages and maintains the security controls and system post deployment. This order ensures that all efforts are aligned with organizational objectives and sustained over time. In order to answer a question like that, obviously you first need to understand what is a security architecture. So security architecture is the structure, design, and framework that defines how an organization's security controls are aligned and integrated to protect its information systems. The key components, as we just discussed, were one, policies and standards, two, security domains, three, security controls, four, integration, and the life cycle of the program, which covers design, implementation, maintenance, and review of security within systems. Question 76. An international organization has decided to use a software as a service or SaaS solution to support its business operations. Which of the following compliance standards should the organization use to assess the international code security and data privacy of the solution? A. Service Organization Control or SOC 2. B. Information Assurance Technical Framework, IATF. C, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act or HIPAA, or the D, Payment Card Industry or PCI. The correct answer is A, Service Organization Control, SOC 2. SOC 2 is a widely recognized compliance standard specifically designed for cloud service providers, including SaaS solutions. It evaluates how effectively a service provider manages security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy of customer data, making it ideal for assessing international cloud security and data privacy in cloud-based services. Question 77. An authentication system that uses challenge and response was recently implemented on an organization's network because the organization conducted an annual penetration test showing that testers were able to move laterally using authenticated credentials. Which attack method was most likely used to achieve this? A. Hash collision. B. Pass the ticket. C. Brute force. Or D. Cross-site scripting. The correct answer is B. Pass the ticket. Pass the ticket is a common lateral movement technique where attackers use stolen Kerberos tickets, that means authentication tokens, to impersonate users and access other systems without needing their passwords. This is especially effective in environments that use challenge and response authentication, like Kerberos. Once the attacker has a valid ticket, they can pass it to other systems to gain access as the authenticated user, ideal for lateral movement. And again, this is very common on hybrid environment that use Microsoft domain controllers. So the pass the ticket is a very sophisticated and common attack in Microsoft domain environments. So how do the pass the ticket work? So first you have the initial compromise. And the initial compromise is the same usual suspect, right? The attacker gain access to a system either through phishing or vulnerability or stolen credential. These are the three main methods of getting access to a system. Second, they steal the ticket. That means that on the compromised machine, the attacker uses tools like Mimikatz, which is very popular, to dump Kerberos tickets, or what refers to as TGTs or STs, from the memory of a logged in user. Um, so that means the context of the user. What that means is that if you are logged in as an administrator, then it's done, right? The criminal will have access to everything. Three, inject the ticket. The attacker injects the stolen ticket into their own session using tools like K-List or Mimikatz again. This tickets, this basically tricks the system into thinking that the attacker is the legitimate user. And then it does for lateral movement. So now, armed with a valid ticket, the attacker can access other systems or services that the user has rights to without ever needing the user's password. And this is why, again, it is so dangerous to have normal users log into a system as an administrator. The administrators of privileged accounts are the key to the kingdom. If a cyber attack, if a system is compromised and you log into that system with a privileged account, then game is over. And five, the persistence and escalation, which means that if they have stolen a TGT, a ticket granting ticket, it's called in Kerberos, they can request more service tickets. With enough privileges, attacker can then move laterally, access sensitive data, or escalate further, for example, to a domain admin. And if they have access to either domain admin or enterprise admins, which are two of the most privileged accounts in a domain, then again, they have access to the entire company. So why is this so dangerous? Well, first of all, as I mentioned before, it doesn't need passwords. It's just access to memory, right? It bypasses MFA since Kerberos ticket reuse doesn't trigger another authentication prompt, and this is why it's so dangerous. Offerings are stealthy and hard to detect without deep monitoring. Uh, if you have tools like Microsoft Defender for endpoint and Microsoft Defender for identity. Microsoft Defender for identity is software that is installed on the domain controllers specifically to defend this kind of attacks. Now, obviously, Microsoft Defender for identity is expensive, but again, cybersecurity is expensive, right? Some of the common tools that are used by uh, that are used to do this are Mimikatz. We mentioned that before. Rubus, Impacket, etc. So it is also important that you have tools to monitor the kind of applications that are installed on the system. So if a cyber criminal compromise a system, obviously it would need to install one of these tools in order to do that. And that's another thing. Most modern EDR systems, antivirus system will detect the installation of these tools. So it's not easy to actually perform this kind of attacks unless it is done in a lab environment. Like I see a lot of people creating videos where they goes, oh, how to um, bypass, MFA and all that kind of stuff. But what I don't explain to people is that before they can do that, this is easy to do in a lab environment because it's your lab and you can install these tools. But for a real hacker to install these tools in a real environment, it's not that easy. That's why these are very sophisticated attacks. Some of the best practices to reduce this kind of risk are one, enable credential guard and that you can in Windows. Disable unencrypted protocols like NTLM whenever possible. You may have all applications that requires NTLM, and you cannot do that. Isolate privileged accounts. This is extremely important. Use labs to manage local admin passwords and monitor with programs like MDE or MDI. Now, of course, there are other programs out there that perform this kind of things, but MDE and MDI are very effective at preventing this kind of attacks. Now, I just talked about LAPS, Local Administrative Password Solution, and so I felt that I wanted to explain because a lot of people probably will. You're going to get this in the exam several times because LAPS is really important, right? So what does LAPS do? It automatically manages and randomizes the local administrator password on each domain joined Windows computer. So what that basically means is that you should always change the local administrator passwords that on computers. You need a local administrator password, but normal users should not have access to this password, right? This is stored securely. Basically, it securely stores the unique password in Active Directory or AD. It prevents lateral movement by eliminating shared admin passwords and improves endpoint security. So in the old days, because administrators know that they need to have access to the administrator password on Windows computers, what the traditional thing used to be, they would change the administrator password on all the local computers that are joined to the domain to a common password, right? And so it would be the same password on all computers. That is the worst thing that you can do, because what that means is that anybody who have access to that password now can access all the computers that are joined to the domain. So it's really it was it, it was used in the past. A lot of administrators still do this, and they don't realize how dangerous this is, right? And and again, so IT and security teams use labs to securely access machines when needed without compromising the entire network. So if you are aspiring to be a CISSP holder, you definitely need to understand what labs it's all about, because this is a really important concept that is used in a lot of companies. So make sure that you understand what this is. Question 78. Which of the following would qualify as an exception to the right to be forgotten of the General Data Protection Regulatory GDPR? A, for the establishment, exercise, or defense of legal claims. B, the personal data has been lawfully processed and collected. C, for the reasons of private interest. D, the personal data remains necessary to the purpose for which it was collected. The correct answer here is A, for the establishment, exercise, or defense of legal claims. Under the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, individuals have the right to be forgotten, which is the right to erase the data. However, this right is not absolute. And one key exception is when data is necessary for the establishment, exercise, or defense of legal claims. Now, what does this mean? It means that uh, under the GDPR, I was working for a company that a big law firm. I used to work in Boston, and at that time I was an exchange engineer. And there was a request in which a customer of the company uh, parted ways with the company, and they didn't want us to basically have any data pertaining to that or the company to that company. So they requested to for us to erase all the data. As the exchange administrator, my part on this was to be able to do an e-discovery on Exchange, find all the data that pertain to that customer, and then delete that data. So that is part of the GDPR. Now, there is and they can do that, but there is a clause that says that, let's say, for example, that there was a legal dispute between that company and my company or any other company, and they had to go to court because that data needed to be retained to go to court. Then in that case that would be an exception, okay, which in our case it was not an exception, so we deleted all the data, but so that just to you understand what this is all about. Question 79. Dumpster diving is a technique used in which a stage of penetration testing methodology. A. Attack. B. Reporting. C. Planning. D. Discovery. The correct answer is D. Discovery. Dumpster diving is a technique where a tester searches through physical trash to find sensitive information such as credentials, internal documents, or network diagrams. This activity is part of passive reconnaissance, which occurs during the discovery phase of penetration testing. The goal of the discovery phase is to gather as much information as possible about the target without active engagement. Dumpster diving is low risk and can yield high value data before an actual attack is simulated. And dumpster diving is not only done by some penetration tester to gather information in the discovery phase to a company. Obviously, cyber criminals do this as well. Uh, a penetration tester just basically does stuff similar to what a real cyber criminal would do to gather information about a company. So yes, this happens. Um, Both penetration testers and cyber criminals may go to a dumpster of a company in order to discover sensitive information that would help them either, with their pen test, or in the case of a criminal, maybe something that would help them penetrate the company and achieve their goals. Question 80. Which of the following is performed to determine a measure of success of a security awareness training program designed to prevent social engineering attacks? A. Employee evaluation of the training program. B. Internal assessment of the training program's effectiveness. C. Multiple choice test to participants. Or D. Management control of reviews. And the correct answer here is B. Internal assessment of the training program's effectiveness. To measure the success of a security awareness training program, especially one focused on preventing social engineering attacks, organization must evaluate how well the program translates into improved user behavior and risk reduction. An internal assessment can include metrics like one, reduction in phishing click rates, two, incident reports, three, simulated attack outcomes, and four, among others, behavior change over time. This type of assessment gives a quantitative and qualitative measure of effectiveness and allow for program improvement. To assess the success of a security awareness training program, you can do some key points over here. One, phishing simulation results, which measure how many users fall for simulated phishing emails before and after training. Two, incident reporting trends, which track the increase in timely and accurate reporting of suspicious activity by users. Three, knowledge retention assessment, which uses quizzes or scenario-based evaluation to test understanding of key security principles. Four, behavioral change observations, which monitor day-to-day security practices like password hygiene, device locking, etc. And metrics and KPIs review, which analyze defined success metrics like risk reduction, training completion rates, and audit findings. The next demo is an introduction to the attack simulation training in Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, or MDE. Now, obviously, there are many products out there that perform attack simulation training or phishing campaigns. This is just one product, but the objectives and results are basically similar. If you use Microsoft products, specifically Microsoft Defender for endpoint, this is the security.microsoft.com portal or page, which is the Microsoft Defender portal. And so if you go to what it says, email and collaboration, which is basically what is referred to as MDO or Microsoft Defender for Office. So here you can get into what is called the attack simulation training. So what that means is that with Microsoft Defender, you have simulation training. Attack simulation training lets you run benign cyber attack simulations on your organization to test your security policies and practices. And this is the overview page. Uh, I have not run any campaigns on my tenant, but here you see which says 97% of users have not experienced the simulation, and that's because I have just tested this with a couple of accounts. But you get a lot of information here, right? Zero users have completed training. So what that means is that when you run these campaigns, these phishing campaigns, and there is tons of templates that you can use out of the box, and you can use your own training as well in different languages. Um, so you could basically, when somebody failed the phishing campaigns, you can have the users do mandatory training. And you can tie this to HR so that people have to do this on a timely basis. A lot of companies do it in an annual basis, which is not efficient. I think that in today's environment, you should have these campaigns in a monthly basis to be effective. But anyway, so here you go to simulations. You can create a number of simulations, and then here is the training. So you'll see who took the training, who's taking the training, especially those people. The training is basically for people who would fail these phishing campaigns, and this is one of the most uh, effective way of actually um, training your users. You get tons of reports on the report section. You can do automations if you wanted to. So simulation automations are automated flows which with the specific techniques and payloads that run when the specified conditions are met. So you can do so tons of stuff that you can do, really advanced, sophisticated attacks that you can simulate in your environment to see, the people that would fall for attacks like that. In the content library, you have a lot of different payloads. You can create your own payloads. So these are tons of stuff that it's out of the box that comes from Microsoft, right? But you can use your own. Here you can configure some settings if you wanted to do that, like to the repeat offender threshold, the training threshold. Again, this is a very good training portal. And some people, if you already have Microsoft licenses, find out if you are entitled to this training because um, you may have some very sophisticated phishing campaigns and training and attack simulation. You're paying for this already. Why not use it? At least just give it a try. A lot of people do not know this about Microsoft, but believe me, it's very good. It's very effective. We have used it at least one of the companies that I used to work for, and we also saved a lot of money by replacing the other company that we were using because we already had the license for this, right? And and that's the thing that people sometimes don't know that this thing exists. They are already paying money for it, and If you're already paying for it, if you group and it's a good product, what have you got to lose by giving it a try? You would be surprised with the results. This is the end of this section. Next session is coming soon. Thank you for watching. And again, if you find this content useful, please subscribe to my channel. That would help me a lot, and I would appreciate that. Thank you.